guys, welcome to Music Blueprint. My name is Gina Fontanella, one of the co-founders of Music Blueprint. And I'm excited today because we're going to talk about side hustles. One of the main things as a musician that you have to have, or any person that is in the arts really. I know I talk a lot about just being musicians, but a lot of this transcends into just people who are creatives and trying to make what you love your full time. But the real important thing in that is to have some side hustles. And I think I've mentioned before that in music or in the arts, you have multiple avenues of revenue. It doesn't really work like a typical 9-to-5 job where you clock in, you clock out, and you get a paycheck every 2 weeks or every month. And it's a lump sum, and it's just from one source. That's not really how it works for musicians. You have multiple avenues going that collectively make your income. And I remember when I first started out as a musician, I was trying to show my parents that this could be a livelihood. My parents were a little hesitant. They knew I was very strong-willed and very independent, but most of the music industry, or most of what people are told, is that you can't make money in the industry, and that is such a lie. There is so much money in the industry. If you just tap into a fraction of it, you will be so set. You just have to know what you're tapping into, and you have to know the way to do it. You got to know the formula, right? You have to know how to be successful, and that's why I even started Music Blueprint. But when I was explaining it to my parents, and I was learning myself, I realized that it didn't come from one source. It came from multiple different things, and you're kind of doing this. I don't want to paint it as a juggling thing, because that makes it feel like that if something drops, you're going to lose it. But just know you have multiple streams going on. And for me, when I was first starting out, it was mainly touring, and then it was songwriting a little bit. Songwriting kind of ended up being my side hustle. And then I had some other random little gigs that if I needed money, I could rely on it. In the real beginning, it was like valet. I was parking cars because I just didn't quite have enough to have a full-time living as a musician, or I just wasn't living the lifestyle that I wanted to live yet. So I had valet just as a supplement. But when I started moving beyond that, playing shows and stuff kind of stayed consistent, and then songwriting took over, and I started making significant more money with songwriting. But I still had some other side hustles, like I was writing for a blog, or I was editing scripts, and I was doing just all this really random stuff. I mean, even right now, thinking of my side hustle, one of the things I'm doing right now is I've just done 4 videos. And in these 4 videos, it's not a video of my face. They're creating a video and I'm just the voice. And they've given me a script, and I read the script, and they just pay me to read the script and use my voice in their videos. And it actually pays really good money. And especially during this pandemic where gigs are kind of few and far between, although I did get to play some and it was great. And you can do some online ones right now, which are great. But because that's very slim, these little extra side hustles are really coming through. I mean, really, really coming through. And that's typically what happens. When you're really in a bind, for some reason, the side hustle is what pulls through and kind of balances out when your main gig isn't in full swing. And sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, sometimes I've just had to bite the bullet and been like, you know what, I'm just gonna have to get a normal paying job, or just like pick up some valet shifts, or pick up some Starbucks shifts, or whatever it is. But just to remind yourself, don't beat yourself up when that happens. just remind yourself that, you know what, 99% of the time, you're doing what you love and you're making money with what you love 99% of the time. So if you have to pick up some Starbucks gigs, it's no big deal. Give yourself a break. It's hard being an entrepreneur, and if we want to go back to the juggling thing, juggling all these different careers at once just so you could be happy. It's okay every once in a while if you have to step down and flip the script really quick just so you can jump 5 steps forward. That's okay. That actually happened to me very, very recently. 2019 was the worst year. I don't want to be dramatic and say of my life, but currently I can't think of a year that was worse. Like, you know, there's years where family members die or things just didn't work out in the way that you wanted it to work out. But 2019 from start to finish was horrendous for me. And I just had a lot of investors drop out, and then I had to foot the bill because these investors dropped out with no warning and all these different things. And so I had to come up with like $10,000 to $12,000 in 6 weeks. That was the start of 2019, okay? That was just the beginning. So I was unbelievably stressed. And then at the same time that was happening, I had gigs fall through that were huge paying gigs that would have kept me afloat for having to pay for, all the money that I had to pay for PR and all these different things, that 10 to 12 grand. Those gigs fell through. And so I was like, well, what am I going to do? I don't have any online songwriting things set up. My other side hustles, there's nothing coming through on that. My gigs are all canceled. I have no income, which I was really financially savvy where I had a savings. So it kept me afloat and I didn't have to go crazy into debt, which then would have made me more stressed because I was in more debt, all of that stuff, which we can talk about being financially savvy on another podcast because there are so many things to dive in on that. But as a musician, just a quick note, you should have at least 3 months backed up in a savings. Whatever your budget is, and if you haven't created a budget, this is what I'm saying, it's gonna dive into stuff. First, create a budget of how much money you need and how much money you spend a month. And then from that budget, times it by 3, and that's what you need to have in a savings. And that might overwhelm you, but that's what you need. Because if you break your arm, you have surgery, you get in a car wreck, whatever the thing is, you gotta know that for 3 months, you're good. You're not stressed. You can pay your bills, you're gravy. But moving on, I was thinking, what am I gonna do? I have nothing lined up. So you know what I did? I said, you know what? I got a Prius. I'm gonna sign up for Lyft. And it literally killed me. I remember thinking to myself, this kills my soul. The thought that I have to take such a big step back after, how many years was I in? Like 5 or 6 years? After 5 or 6 years of being a full-time musician, I have to take such a big step back that none of my income was music related. And at that specific time when I made that decision. And I said, you know what? You got to show yourself some grace. And I did. I showed myself some grace. I said, this is just for a period of time. And if this is what you need to do to just launch yourself forward, then this is what you need to do. And you having 2 months of doing Lyft to do that is no big deal, because would you rather stay behind and not take the steps forward just because you didn't want to do those 2 months? No, I'd rather move forward. So I did it. I did Lyft, and actually I really did make the best of it. So much so that I've actually thought about doing Lyft again, because I met so many people in the industry that I still have contact with today because of driving Lyft. Because I was in LA, I was driving Lyft in LA, and I just met connection after connection. And people would ask me, well, what do you really do? And then I'm like, well, I'm a musician. This is kind of like a weird transition period for me, trying not to like give an excuse. And then they would always be like, well, show us your stuff. Boom, I show them my stuff. They'd be like, this is what you do? What are you doing driving Lyft? And then I would explain like, just a quick story. I'm like, I'm just kind of in this rough period right now. I had some investors fall, blah, 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 whatever. And then they would be like, here's my card, contact me. Here's this, here's that. And I met some of my biggest connections today just because of driving Lyft. So I'm thinking, you know what? I actually need to go back to driving Lyft because it really worked out in my favor that I did it. And it really did catapult me 10, 12 steps forward just because I did that. And it ended up, working out. I mean, few months into that, I got started working for like an agency and doing some agency gigs, and those are very consistent and pay well and literally just put me on my feet and put me right back to normal. So I really lucked out with that. And then I got some songs cut on some labels, so then I got paid from that. So it ended up, by the end of 2019, I had regulated. It was still pretty crappy. The holidays were pretty crappy. And I had to weed out some very negative friendships. But at the end of 2019, financially, I had rebalanced out. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie. It was hard. But all that to be said is that it's okay to go back to some things sometimes just to rebalance out. And just to maybe, you were overwhelmed and maybe you hopped to it too quick and or whatever. You got to find the right timing of things, and sometimes you jump the gun or whatever, but you got to know when what the right thing is for you. And what the thing that's going to squash your creativity is being stressed about money. So, to take a step back is not a big deal. Give yourself some grace, show yourself some love. You're not a failure because you have to go back to your old job for a couple of months just to make some cash, and then you go back to doing what you were doing before. That's okay. But moving on, that was kind of a little bit of a tangent, but moving on to the side hustles. I've mentioned my side hustle right now is doing, I guess you would technically call it voiceover work. It's great. So great. I haven't really, the thing about it right now is I haven't really nailed down like what the actual like rate I should be giving is. But what I do know is that it's kind of through a friend, but the rate that I'm doing right now is $50 a minute. So whatever the script is, usually it's about a page long. If it's a page long, it's anywhere from like 3.5 to 5 minutes. So I'm getting $50 a minute. It takes me about, on a good day, 15 minutes to get through the script. But I do have some experience with this now. So now, 15 minutes is because of my experience with it. In the beginning, it probably took me like 30 minutes. And in this scenario, they have 3 revisions. I think 3 revisions is a little bit excessive, but again, I'm doing it through a friend, and that's what they requested. So I'm like, whatever. And usually the revisions aren't too crazy, and they don't take me very long. So, if it's a 3.5 minute video, I'm making like $180 for less than an hour's work. And in my head, if I'm making anywhere from $75 to $100 an hour, that's good money. Good money. So again, finding those side hustles of those little random things, and what's great about those
those side hustles is that it gives you a break from what you do every day. It just gives a little bit of relief so that if you are feeling a little bit creatively blocked, these little side hustles are actually really good because it's something that's very outside of your comfort zone, something that you've never done before. Or, maybe your side hustle is kind of in the same lane. I mean, my side hustle for the longest time was songwriting. I was touring full time. That was my main income, but I would get all these gigs online, all these little songwriting things online. And it would be adding an extra, some months it would add an extra $1,000. But typically it was like anywhere from $250 to $500 a month that I was making just from some people asking me to write their songs. And right now, songwriting is really my main income. And that started as a side hustle. It actually started as a side hustle, and then I started focusing on it more. And then it became my main thing. And now I use it as I'm starting to get more into using it on the streaming side. So I've written a lot of songs, and that's been my focus for the last few months. But the streaming side, that's my side hustle right now too, as well, is let me see what I can make and see if I can make another full-time income with just streaming alone, because I have a lot of friends who do it, a lot of friends who do it, but that's been their sole focus. Their main income is streaming. What I like is that I love touring. My main thing is touring and probably songwriting. So I like those two things to be the forefront. But if I can get the streaming side at the same level as those two things, I have 3 full main incomes going. And then on top of that, I got my little voiceover gigs. I got my little acting gigs. You know what I mean? I have all these little things. And then the tiny side hustles are just like chump change. Just extra things that I could just do with or buy gear with or whatever. I mean, the last voiceover thing that I got, I used it to buy an auto-tune that I needed for Logic, and then I used it to buy some speakers. It's great. But you got to have multiple avenues of revenue. All that to be said, you got to have multiple avenues of revenue, multiple streams going, and collectively that will make your income. And what's actually the beauty of that is that if one goes down, you still have others generating income. If you're a 9-to-5 scenario and you lose your job, then what? Unemployment, maybe. But in a musician scenario and in an entrepreneur scenario, when one goes down, you're like, okay, that sucks. That went down. I got to find another source for that. But also I know that I have all these other incomes going, so I'm not fully stressed out because I have a balance going. And that is the key as well. You got to have a balance. You don't want to be lopsided, as hard as that is. You want to do your best to not be lopsided. For me, I was really lopsided on touring. And so when I decided to move to LA and focus on songwriting, I was hella scared because I was like, I've only done touring. I don't even know how to do this without touring. And I had to just figure it out. So I'm trying to relay some wisdom here in saying, try to find a balance, try to not have all your eggs in one basket, because you never know what's going to happen. And that's the scary part of music, is that if all your stuff isn't touring, what happens if you went snowboarding and you broke your arm? Then you can't tour. So then you're relying on hopefully your savings that you saved up for, which I know a lot of musicians aren't good about. So then if you're lucky enough to have a savings, then you're good for 3 months, but you're still going to be stressed about money because other things aren't coming in. Rather than if you built up your side hustle to start slowly becoming your another main thing, then when you break your arm, you're like, I broke my arm, but I can still write songs. It's just finding balance and finding things and making sure that you're getting all these different things going so that collectively you're making a great income to live a great life, because that is so important. I want you to live a happy life. and also be able to live normally. You can live a normal life on a normal income and be a musician and do it with something that makes you happy. It's possible. You can do it. If you like what you heard, please like and subscribe, and comment below some side hustles that have either turned into your main thing or just some side hustles that you've enjoyed. I'd love to see some of the random things that people have come up with. Mine has obviously been voiceovers, and I did some random blog work for a yacht company. That was really random. But I'd love to see what some of you guys have done. So comment those below, and I'll see you next Monday. Bye.